Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. My name's Amy Baker. I am CEO at The Pi, and I am delighted to be delivering a very thought-provoking 45 minutes on the future of innovative collaboration between K-12 and higher ed. So this is part of the Rosedale Global Education Summit 2021, and I'm delighted to introduce a really great panel to spend the next 45 minutes with me. First up, we have Pam Turnbull. She is Director of Teaching and Learning at Rosedale International Education in Canada. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you.
We have Jeffrey Young. He is Director of Programs and Professor of Practice in Education Leadership at the Teachers College in Columbia University in the US. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
We have Catherine Whitaker, CEO and Head of Learning at EtonX.
Thanks for having me here.
And we have Dr. Eleanor Parker, Head of Learning Development at King's College London, also in the UK.
Hi there, great to be with you.
And last but not least, we have Jake Howard, who is Manager of International Recruitment, Americas, Middle East and Africa at University of British Columbia in Canada. Welcome, Jake.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So we have a lot to get through, just the future of innovative curriculum development and cohesion between K-12 and higher ed. Love to hear all of your inputs on this, but Pam, let me come to you first. Tell me more about your role at Rosedale and how you have been working both as a school and curriculum designer in tandem with higher ed.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, I'm Director of Teaching and Learning here at Rosedale Academy, and my role has been to oversee curriculum design and development and our teacher training program. And because we are an organization that is founded on partnerships, we're built on partnerships. Our program is offered by partners around the world, and so we take that concept of partnership very seriously, and it is something that we want to sort of expand. And I think the fact that we're having this global summit speaks to that, of bringing other people in order to, share ideas and partner. So we have asked our students in our curriculum design and programming to think outside of the box. And we, of course, then if we're going to ask our students to do that, we need to do that as well. And so we have been focused on working with higher education around the world, actually, but a lot of it has been happening initially in Canada with our higher education institutions in developing partnerships that have a whole range of things. I know usually what often happens is that K-12 schools will partner with a university for a pathway type of program, but we wanted to move beyond those pathways and look at what else we can do. So our first big project was actually to work with Vancouver Film School. You'll be very familiar with them. They are a internationally known film program where particularly for their animation program. And what we did in working with Vancouver Film School was to co-develop high school courses in media arts. So we developed film and TV, game design, animation, and digital design courses. And we developed them together. So Vancouver Film School brought in the industry expertise. We brought the Ontario education focus and et cetera, and built this program together. And so now we're able to offer these courses around the world. We're sort of innovative as well in terms of looking at how are we going to manage the intellectual property issues there. And in fact, what we've ended up with is both of us owning IP in this program. So again, a win-win for both partners. So that was our major partnership that we dealt with. In other areas, what we have been doing is really reaching out to universities to ask if we can learn from them. So, for example, with the University of Waterloo, they have an outreach program from their mathematics department, and they came in and did a professional development session for our teachers and our curriculum designers in helping us to understand what are they doing around higher order thinking in their math program? What are they doing around real world problem solving? And how can we learn from them? In addition to that, we have also had conversations with universities about ways that we can, for example, we talked with a university about their, in their science department, of how can we share all this information, this great research that you are doing, and bring it down a level to high school so that those students can be more prepared. For example, environmental watershed issues was one conversation.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me, Pam, what was the reaction from the students who were able to benefit from that cross-developed curriculum with Vancouver Film School, for example?
Yeah, well, it's actually fantastic because one of the things that we recognized right away was that because we are offering our program worldwide, having teachers who can teach this program on the ground, in China or wherever we might be, is a bit of a challenge. So we're able to, it's an online program that's supplemented by teachers both from our Ontario certified teachers and Vancouver Film School teachers. So we're able to bring, really world-class opportunities to young people around the world.
That's great. Really interesting and great to hear such collaboration is alive and well in Canada. Let's move to you, Eleanor, in the UK now. So you are head of learning development, and I know you're sort of expert in curriculum and helping students essentially navigate how to understand the curriculum at higher education level and what gaps there might be. What are the sort of biggest gaps, do you think, in curriculum design and learning experience that you come across when students are negotiating sort of education at tertiary stage?
Thanks, Amy. I think I've had quite a number of interesting perspectives on this. I used to be a recruiter. I've been a member of academic faculty. I've worked on curriculum design, and now I support the development of students' academic skills and literacies across the college in my current role at King's. So I think some of the challenges in this space as related to the learning experience, particularly for those transitioning to the UK higher ed environment, I think it's very much around the term independent learning. And that often gets kind of bandied around quite a lot in these conversations, but I've tried to think in a bit more specific terms today about what that might mean and some of the areas that we really focus on. I'd also just state that I think this idea of gaps can also be quite problematic. I think it often leads us to quite a deficit idea, especially in COVID. We know learning has been lost in different ways, but we're also trying to do a lot in our work, kind of bring to the fore the strengths that students already have and how we can help further develop them. So what would that independent learning look like, and where are some of those key transition points? I think most broadly, it might be termed under self-efficacy, but that would look like things like students being able to manage their studies effectively, planning their time, working with a different type of curriculum, and even quite basically a different type of timetable. In terms of the academic literacies themselves, I think it's about that shift to an increased focus on evaluation and analysis in their learning, depending on the curriculum and the system they've come from, that idea of critically engaging, be that with reading, with information, with statistics, with writing, and the interconnection of those things with the added area of kind of working in the digital skills that students have needed to develop even more. I think those are some of the kind of key areas of focus that we've seen have been important.
And do you think there are measures that could be occurring at secondary learning level which would greater empower students to then deal with the sort of self-efficacy, as you say, that they do need at undergrad and postgrad level?
Yeah, I think building on what was said before, I think this idea of partnerships is really important. I think a lot will depend on the discipline and the system students are transitioning to, but I think it's about secondary educators working with recruiters, and where possible through recruiters and with other higher ed professionals who work on, say, curriculum design, who support students in a service like mine. I think it's that introduction to university level learning, the opportunity to engage with new information, the opportunity for students to frame and ask questions, especially to educators and other students they know less well. So that prioritization where we can of discussion-based activities, especially where students can explore perspectives that are not their own, that will help them in a new learning environment where they're engaging with students and educators with whom they're less familiar.
Really interesting. So really about empowering them to be a sort of bolder interactor, I suppose, in their learning.
Absolutely. And that really that core skill or competency, which I know we might discuss later, that idea of self-advocacy, which I think certain pre-secondary curricula prioritize more than others, perhaps, or certain education environments, you might have the space to do that more. But there's a real important space there, really important space there for also the near peer and peer-to-peer activities. So resources that universities will have like ambassadors, but also engaging with more of the vertical learning communities. So right up through alumni, giving students exposure to what that learning has meant at the different levels will give them the chance to think about where they fit and develop more of their own agency.
That's great. Thanks, Eleanor. We talked about the introduction to the experience of being a higher ed learner as well. Jake, I think that's a really good point to bring you in on. Tell us more. I know University of British Columbia has a future global leaders program. Tell us more about that and why you think that works to sort of reach out to schools, secondary school students at a younger age.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as Eleanor was speaking, I was nodding along because that's a lot of what she's talking about. A lot of those skills that we're trying to develop in our young people is exactly what the Future Global Leaders does alongside the academic sort of curriculum that we provide. And so UBC's Future Global Leaders program is for students sort of 15 to 18. The majority of our students who come are sort of in that grade 11 or IB1 or whatever curriculum you follow sort of age group. So right around that sort of 16-year-old. And they're the ones who are mostly in our program, but we do get some younger students as well. And they come to study at UBC. They are 2-week-long summer. Let me rephrase. Our program started out as a summer program only. And so it was 2 weeks long. And we offered 3 different sessions. During those 3 sessions, different themes or streams were offered. So everything from a STEM to PPE to, media and society. And the streams change every year. So if a student did want to come, in grade 10 and then come back in grade 11, there would be different offerings for them to take part in. But the idea is to really give them a taste of what life as a UBC student is like for those 2 weeks. So they live on campus. All of their classes are taught by our professors. We don't outsource professors specifically for this program. They are engaged in and have access to all the facilities on campus. They work with our RAs, so they have that direct experience as well. And it's just really a chance for them to try on that university life, but also grow those skills outside of their academics, right? So being away from home for the first time, being independent, they do get put in groups to work together towards a capstone project. And so having to navigate sort of that group work at a higher level as well, and present and do some like a final research project. And so there's a variety of different social skills that are being developed as they go through the program as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds really interesting. So, sorry, go on.
No, sorry. And then I realized that you asked about the outreach to high schools. And so I wanted to give that a quick address. Well, how we do most of our recruitment for the program is via our recruiters. So our recruiters who go out and are looking to connect with students and families for our undergraduate programs also do the recruitment for the Future Student Global Leaders, as we are already in strong relationships with a lot of these schools globally. We capitalize on that for both of these 2 programs because we do really see a benefit to a summer's program. Not necessarily that a UBC Future global leader would come back to UBC for their undergrad, but it does really prepare them for any university or college experience afterwards. And so sort of highlighting that as well.
And I was going to ask, how many students typically in 1 year then would take part in one of those programs that you offer?
Yeah, so when we were doing the, and I'll address this in a second as well, we started off doing the summer programs only. We would have about 800 students throughout the summer. So, 200 to 300 per cohort or per intake. And so we are one of the largest summer programs as well in North America, which also makes us a little bit unique. We also have students from about 40 different countries that come. So it is quite a diverse population that are having that opportunity to live and work together. One of the small silver linings of COVID is that we have actually been able to, the last 2 summers, we did an online program, and we've also been able to keep that. So we're actually running a Future Global Leaders session right now throughout the fall, and we'll continue to do sort of 3 different intakes throughout the year. So we'll have our on-campus in the summertime, and then we'll have some online versions in the fall and winter as well. Those do tend to be less popular because students are still going through high school at the same time. But I think this cohort in the that we have right now is about 200 students. So it's still a large number coming through. Yeah,
no, really interesting. And from the feedback you obviously take from the students, what is it particularly that they really value, you think, and feel sort of empowered by having been on the program?
I think for a lot of our students, the feedback that we get, it's sort of one or the other camp. Some of it is the academic side. And so they really are enjoying the fact that they are getting to study at this sort of pre-university level and working with these amazing professors that are experts in their industry. And it does a great job of preparing them for that stream at uni. And at the same time, it also lets them know that if maybe that's not what they want to study. Maybe they thought that PPE was something that was going to be super interesting. And then they spend 2 weeks sort of living and breathing it. And they go, you know what? Turns out that's not what I'm interested in. So it does really help on the academic side. But I would say the majority of our students who come, our feedback is really around being on their own for the first time and feeling that sense of independence and how much they've grown and how much they've connected to the global community that we attract to the Future Global Leaders program, and just really having that sense of, building their network and kind of establishing themselves as a unique individual.
That's really interesting. Catherine, I feel like this is a great segue from Jake. Thanks, Jake, over to you, because I think there are very similar goals that you would have, I think, at Eton X, but maybe you could tell the audience about Eton X and what the goals and missions are of the organisation.
Yes, thanks. Well, I know we've got a very international audience, so I'll just explain what Eton is. First of all, Eton College is probably the best known school in the UK, founded in 1440 by King Henry VI, and going strong for almost 600 years. It has a reputation for producing students who tend to go on to do very well in lots of different areas of life. Eton X was founded in 2015, and our mission is really to take some of what the students who are lucky enough to go to Eton get at that school and allow students all over the world, but also all over the UK in other sectors to access those programs. We took a decision really early on that there's lots of great academic support you can find. We've always been an online company, and we felt, well, there's a lot of academic support if you want to go and find it. But what is different, what we felt we could do differently was to look at providing courses for a lot of the things that Eleanor was talking about there. Actually, I was just sort of making a mental note of some of the skills that you say that students need when they get to university. Eton does it through a really broad-based education where students have the opportunity to run clubs and societies, and they build confidence and networking skills and all these wonderful things. What we've done is find a way to deliver skill development in those similar areas. So we have academic skills like critical thinking, research skills. We have a course called Resilience, which has a lot of self-efficacy work in it. And then we also look at what sometimes get called soft skills. I hate that word because I actually think these are really hard skills to develop, but things like creative problem solving, assertiveness, influencing, those kind of things. So we're trying to help, really, I think, help students make the most of the education that they're having at the moment, but very much prepare them for that more independent, more challenging very different environment of university and the workplace thereafter. As I said, we're online. We try and do this not just through the content of our courses, but also the way we teach. So students who have access to a tutored version of our course, that's a small group experience. There's a lot of peer learning. We're asking them to do difficult things, to express themselves, to test out their ideas. We work in different ways. We work in schools, we work directly with students, but sometimes we have global cohorts where people are really hearing from very different perspectives from different students who've had very different experiences to date than they have.
That's really interesting. Two questions immediately spring to mind. One is, how much do you work with secondary schools, maybe domestically or internationally, to actively advocate for what EtonX can offer for their students?
So I think we do two different things. We operate in the UK as part of Eton's partnership work, and then last year during COVID we opened the doors to our self-access courses for free. That offer is still there, so any UK secondary school that wants its students to have access to any of the courses I've just mentioned are able to access that for their year 10s and up. And yes, we have, and through that we worked with 1,000 UK schools over the last 15 months, and that's given us a huge opportunity to talk to teachers in those schools about what those students need. And it's interesting that some of the feedback we hear from that section of the education system can mirror some of the experiences we have internationally, where we're working on a commercial basis with schools and students, and they're looking to increase their aspiration. They're looking for increased confidence, and obviously, if you're talking about on an international level, increasing their English abilities as well, their ability to work in English in a way that's not just exam focused or curriculum focused. So yeah, we work very much with UK secondary schools, but also with clients overseas, and then we as much as possible try and talk to people who are already in higher education. So quite a lot of our materials are written by either written by or contributed to by people in academia or in student development in other areas as well.
That's great, thank you. The other part of the question, I think you've answered, it was about widening participation and encouraging more students from different backgrounds to consider themselves as comfortable at university. But I think you possibly answered that by saying that the courses are actually available for free in the
UK. Yes, yeah, and that's a very important part of what we do.
Yeah. For anyone watching who doesn't know the Eton brand, our current Prime Minister went there, and I think Eton has educated more Prime Ministers, I think, is that right, than any other school in our country?
Yes, 20, including a current Prime Minister, yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Catherine. Jeff, thanks for being so patient. Let's come to you. Tell us more about, I know you have been a superintendent at a school division, and you have some really interesting experience around that too. But first, tell us about your current work at Teachers College at Columbia University.
Thanks so much, Amy. And first of all, it's the one thing that's hard about being the last speaker is following a panel of such august and outstanding educators and leaders, Catherine, Eleanor, Jake, Pam. What great work all of you are doing. I'm proud to be sitting here with you today. My perspective is, as Amy just mentioned, from two different angles. One being that of a former superintendent of schools, which here in the States refers to the kind of CEO of a whole city or community, a group of schools, right? A superintendent oversees all of the high schools, middle schools, elementary schools within a community. So that's a role that I had, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then after I left that role and joined the faculty at Teachers College, which I'll just refer to as TC, that's what we call it, I've had a slightly different perspective on things. And so let me talk a little bit about the TC work first. And here, the project I want to mention to you, which is all about partnerships, both the Cambridge and the the TC work is all about partnerships. And
Right.
and this one at TC is really brand new. When I say brand new, I mean like a month old. It has just begun. And I really
We heard
need
it here
to-
first.
So you're hearing it first. Well, probably second. So here it is. That I want to make sure that I give proper credit where it is due, because I am not the main investigator or leader of this project, but rather it is my colleague at Teachers College, the absolutely brilliant Professor Sonia Douglas Horsford, who, along with a group, an institute that she leads at TC called BERC, B-E-R-C, which is the Black Education Research Collective, just recently got a I think it was $3.25 million grant from the New York City Council to develop an interdisciplinary K-12, right? So the whole city, Black Studies curriculum for what turns out to be the largest school district in the U.S. Just to give you a little sense of scale, the New York City Department of Education has about 1,800 schools and educates about 1 million students in grades K through 12. So Sonia and her team is leading this incredible project and I think the reason that TC and Sonia were chosen for this grant is because TC brings tremendous expertise in culturally relevant education and curriculum development and pedagogy and professional development to the table, particularly in areas in the urban settings, right? So New York City is often referred to, sadly, as the most segregated school system in the U.S. It's gigantic, and the income inequalities are dramatic, and it's really important for not just people at Teachers College, but throughout New York City to really try to go after this issue and in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this project calls for working with the Department of Education, which is the public schools, and other community partners to improve the quality of education for all students, right? And so there are partners involved in a number of different sectors. This came to be largely because of a research report that Dr. Horsford and her team put together from BERC just probably about 4, 5, 6 months ago, which found that Black Americans, that their trust in schools and other public institutions has been significantly eroded by governmental and institutional responses to COVID, to police brutality, to anti-Black violence, and certainly to the uprising that we had here in our U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And so there's a real trust gap. And the City Council, along with BERC, has now decided we're going to address that in a real way through the education system. And so they're going to work on developing a pilot program that will introduce all K-12 students to topics exploring early African civilizations, the continuum of Black experience in America, contributions and experience of the peoples of the African diaspora, and the impact of systemic and institutional racism on all members of society, right? So these are topics that have always been there in the States and have kind of simmered below the surface. And then so much of what has happened here in our country over the last couple of years has just shown a spotlight on it. And so while the things that have happened have been horrible, the good that comes out of it, we hope, is that people are now saying, okay, this is real, we see it, and we need to do something about it. And in the words of the president, just one last thing, just in the words of the president of TC, Tom Bailey, he would say, as I think we all do, that education is really the pathway to ending systemic racism in society. And so this is the New York City's really thoughtful attempt to enter into this discussion in a powerful and concrete way. And they have happily invited TC to be their partner in this work. Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
No, it's really interesting. I was just going to sort of ask a question of clarity so that it's clear for me and hopefully everyone else. So if I'm right in understanding what the ambition is, it's to sort of fundamentally transform curriculum design and content so that these students feel far more engaged as a part of society and maybe more likely to become lifelong learners. Is that
No, I think that's right. But
yeah.
And again, I just want to emphasize the point that it's not just for Black students, right? The program here is around, trying to express more visibly the Black experience over time, going back to the founding of our country, starting with with slavery, obviously, and everything that came as a result of that. But it's also for kids who look like me and kids who look like you, and it's for all kids, right? This is not.
No one's called me a kid in a while, but yeah.
So, nor if I called myself that, but here we are. So, but you see, it's really a sense of it being the right thing to do for all New York City kids, not just some New York City kids. And so that's kind of the drive in New York and at TC. And so again, I just want to recognize Dr. Horsford, who is, she's just
fascinating,
top of the line.
Let me come back to you, Pam, before I come. I know there's more I want to hear from you on, Jeff, but Pam, as a sort of educator and curriculum designer yourself, how sort of inspired are you by that sort of fundamental reappraisal of what and how to teach?
I guess I have to start by saying my head is just buzzing right now with partnership possibilities. So I'm thinking about how can I contact each of you to talk about, what we can do together, because I think that there's a lot of synergy between what Rosedale is doing and what your organizations are doing. And we have at Rosedale, we call our program a transformative approach to education. And we have sort of 5 pillars that we focus on. The first one being that we develop higher order thinking skills in our students. And so that's all of the things that you've been talking about in terms of critical and creative thinking, the processing skills and reflecting skills, again, the kind of thing that's so important. But in addition to that, we focus on differentiated education and making sure that we're meeting the individual needs of students, sort of meeting them where they are at. As well, we're focusing on a personalized learning plan. And I think this gets back again to some of the things that, Eleanor and Catherine were talking about, and really with the Global Leaders program as well, in terms of helping young people to, sort of see who they are, where their skills and their aptitudes are, and how they can develop the skills and the program that will lead to the programs or the career or the university, destination that they want. And the last piece is global awareness. And again, I think that this, sort of fits in very well with what you were talking about. Pandemic, of course, slowed things down for us, but one of the areas we really want to focus on is global mobility, which means giving our students opportunities to go to other countries and other places to experience education. So, for example, having an opportunity to go to UBC for 2 weeks to participate in the Global Leader program. We also have what we call our IGP, Individual Growth Plan, which is very much sort of a guidance program, but again, it's focused on developing those self-efficacy skills that Eleanor talked about in terms of building those soft skills that young people need. And so I'd love to hear more about those 2 programs that you do, Eleanor and Catherine, and how maybe they can be integrated into what we are doing. So, everything at Rosedale is about, again, partnering with people to bring in the best that's out there, best practices to improve education for our young people. And many of them, because we are in so many different countries around the world, don't have these opportunities. So for us to bring a program that requires them to do higher order thinking and develop all of those skills is really earth-shaking for many of those communities. So we're very, very excited about that and want to continue to grow. We're just in the midst.
Can I ask you one more quick question? I'm aware we only have 10 minutes left, so I want to keep moving things on. But do you advocate then, or does your wider organisation advocate for the sort of unique benefits of a Rosedale curriculum graduate in the same way that perhaps IB might say IB does say our students are more globally minded, for example, given our unique curriculum?
I think we're certainly in the beginning stages of that. I think this Global Summit is an example of doing exactly that, of helping people to see, the work that we've been doing, which really, as Jeff said, we're just building on the shoulders of giants, right? Everyone else has been doing this work as well, and we're bringing in all of these best practices. So we're in the beginning stages of that, and that is certainly a goal.
Great. Jeff, I want to come back to you as well. I mean, I think we are all passionate about empowering the learner to become bold learners, lifelong learners. And I know you have also a very interesting experience working with Harvard, a bit like Eton, one of the names in education. Tell us more about your experience as a superintendent and working with Harvard to enable students to think this is something I could achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm going to both speak quickly and somewhat sketchily here, because there's so much to say. Where the TC project has been up and running for about a month, the Harvard one has been in existence for 20 years or more, and has really grown over time. So I was formerly the superintendent of schools in the city of Cambridge. When most people think of Cambridge, Massachusetts, their mind immediately goes to Harvard or to MIT, understandably so. It turns out that that's about half of what the city of Cambridge really is, right? It's an extremely diverse city of students, racially, ethnically, socioeconomically. Just to give you a sense, economically, when I was there, at least about half of the kids in schools were on what we call the free and reduced lunch program, right? So you have some very wealthy people, very highly educated people, and then other people who are at the other end of the economic spectrum, all being educated together. Fascinating, great city, and terrific school system. One of the things that we've really worked hard on over the years there is taking advantage of the incredible resources that are there, namely Harvard and MIT. I'm not going to have time to talk too much about MIT today, but let me give you just a couple of snapshots of the work that we've done in partnership with Harvard. And then if there's time, I can explain a little bit about how we can sort of distill certain important elements of all partnerships from this experience. So the partnerships really speak to work that's done between the district and the university for students, for teachers, and for families. Okay, so for students, we have a thing called Project Teach, which is where this reminds me of something that Jake was saying, where all seventh graders throughout the city, about 500 or 600 kids per grade, right, develop a college-going identity through this program. And we show them that college can be an affordable and accessible opportunity for them, including on-campus college visits. We haven't gotten to the point of the 2-week overnight that you were describing, although that sounds great, but nevertheless, just trying to get kids to see the college, the university that's just down the street from where they live. The Science and Engineering Showcase is for all the 8th graders in the city, right? And so this is something that was developed in concert by the Cambridge Public Schools Science Department and Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Science, where all 8th graders, again, about 500-600 kids a year, develop a science project under the tutelage of their teachers as well as Harvard professors, and end up doing a big showcase at the end of the year on the Harvard campus, which every year is greeted, if you can imagine this, 600 8th graders in the auditorium being welcomed by, at least the last time I was there, by Drew Faust, who was the president of Harvard University. And so all these little 13-year-old kids are seeing the president of Harvard saying, "We want you here. You're doing great work." Incredible message. The Crimson Summer Academy is for high school students to give them the skills and financial support to really thrive and excel in college. And through close mentoring with college undergraduates, right? Harvard undergrads become their mentors, not professors here, but college undergrads become their mentors to give them a vision of what's possible as they prepare to become viable candidates for admission. Just so you know about, everyone likes to measure. So about more than 85% of the academy, that this summer academy, the Crimson Academy's graduates go on to attend 4-year colleges. Reimagining integration, diversity, and an equitable schools project, right? Again, folks from Harvard working with principals and teachers in our schools to help students, all kids, learn about, feeling included, understanding other cultures, providing leadership and staff and professional development. The Conant Fellowship turning over to teachers. I know
that's great. I think I have to leave it there, Jeff, because we are running short of time. But that's really.
And we will leave it there. But the list goes on. That's all I can tell you.
The sort of the power of partnerships.
It's the power of partnership. And once you've built that partnership, once you've built the relationship, and once there's a sense of win-win, right? The thing about partnerships is it's not one directional. It needs to be win-win for both partners.
Absolutely.
And once you build that, then you have the garden from which these other beautiful flowers can bloom.
Let me try and bring everyone else in very briefly. But Jake, on this question, I mean, do you have any advice for those people watching around how to build collaborations and partnerships based on your experience at UBC?
Yeah, I mean, for UBC, at least with our undergrad programs, I think a lot of the partnerships that come are sort of a much more like grassroots level. So it is about getting into contact with some of our recruiters or some of our professors and leaders in other faculties that are doing some interesting work. And so just a quick taste, like our Faculty of Land and Food Systems does do some local partnerships with our high schools around some of the research work and sort of introducing the ideas of their programs at that level as well. And so, but it is much more grassroots. It's not this like large overarching UBC, but it is. If you have a subject area or a unique program in your high school that you think would match really well with some university support, reach out. So many of us are really open to these ideas, and it doesn't always have to be this like contract written in set in stone agreement. It is often gets started on a human to human level. And so that's definitely where things start to the seeds start to get planted and grow, as the analogy that Jeff used as well. So do reach out. We love to work with our schools in all different capacities. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks. Eleanor, I'll come back to you now. I see you as our curriculum learning design expert. So I'll ask you a question more around curriculum, but if a student had studied a progressive, innovative curriculum which had really set them up for success, could you just sort of distill for us those sort of key competencies and skills, learning attitudes they would have?
Wow, that's a challenging question, Amy, and one where we talk a lot about across our employability services teams, across my academic skills service teams, across our curriculum design and development teams. I think the challenge for universities is we need to try and be aligned in some of that thinking. So I think the kind of core competencies will really depend on the institution's also values and sort of broader ethos. But I think if I were to talk about a couple of things that are important to King's and really at the forefront of our minds at the moment, I think giving students, graduates, the ability, that the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes to take that forward to make a difference in the world, whatever that will mean for them. I think at King's we call that the kind of service education, and that's a really important part of the way we engage with curriculum and with students more generally. And then I think finally, given our international audience today, I'd be talking about cultural competency, actually, because almost irrespective of some of those other academic literacies I was talking about, I think giving students the competencies to engage critically but supportively and respectfully with each other is really important to their learning experience and their broader educational experience.
Thank you so much. And Catherine, I think this might be the final comment we have time for, but given you work with higher education and sort of business to hone the programs and skills that you develop, I'd just like a quick word from you on where you see education evolving and whether you see more collaboration, what you think the education landscape might look like in a few years from now in terms of this partnership and collaboration approach.
That's also a very big question. I think this debate about the broader skill base that students need, even to access very pure academic programs at university, but then more, in a broader sense, in order to be successful beyond and to contribute, like Eleanor was mentioning, to society and the world. This debate, when we started in 2015, it felt like every now and then you'd meet someone and we get very excited that other people were saying the same thing. This debate is becoming almost universal, I think. For me, the biggest thing that needs to change is the exam system, because I think when schools are still funneling people into a knowledge-based test at the end of the year, obviously a lot of all the wonderful things that we've been talking about don't always happen, because that's not how they're judged. And you know, the work around reimagining assessment for me is the biggest piece here, because when you free schools up to think more broadly and to be more creative, then I think you can introduce the kind of programs more readily that lead to what universities and employers are looking for.
That is great. That is a great challenge for us all to leave this panel session on reimagining assessment. Okay, thank you. We don't have time for any more conversation, but thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to thank our panel, Pam, Jeff, Jake, Eleanor, and Catherine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.